Hello, my future global politicians. The next few minutes are going to be a brief reflection on ASEAN's history, the sources of its power and legitimacy, as well as its effects on state sovereignty. Firstly, a short info dump. ASEAN, or rather the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, is a regional IGO made up of 10 member states from Southeast Asia. It is led by a Secretary-General who, once elected, serves a 5-year unrenewable term and consists of numerous organs. Similar to the UN or the EU and such, its member states meet at an annual summit in Jakarta and operate under the ASEAN Charter, which focuses on improving the region's stability and security, advancing socio-political development, and furthering the member states' economic cooperation. Now for a bit of history. In the post-colonial and Cold War times, ASEAN served as a crutch and baseline for the region's shaky stability. It established itself as the leading voice for all issues economic and security related, which were at the time largely a common and very real fear of communist insurgencies. And during the mid-70s, it began to yield substantial economic prosperity for its member states, at least relative to their neighbors. In the 1990s, up until the early 2000s, the region was even showing promise in conforming to a model for democratization, spurred by the global wave of democratization following the end of the Cold War. Influenced by successful democratic models in East Asia such as Japan, Singapore, and South Korea, and of course a desire for economic development and international legitimacy, some nations in the region embraced popular democratic principles. But that began deteriorating from the 2010s onwards as the region faced increasing militarization, staged elections, and the like. But what actually gives ASEAN the right to make these decisions? And do those decisions really hold any weight? Well, this brings us to the topic of its power and legitimacy. ASEAN's influence is largely limited to soft power and is based mostly in the economic growth and security that it provides for its member states, maintaining a sense of unity in the face of third world problems, mainly preventing unrest and chaos. It remains the region's leading prospect for expedited development and has cemented the notion that it's in its member states' best interests to collaborate and commit to its decisions. This makes it similar to many other regional IGOs in that it derives its legitimacy from the aforementioned factors of, mutual interests, shared economic power, and consensus-based decision-making. However, ASEAN's legitimacy and rapport suffer in comparison to other IGOs like the EU due to a few controversial factors. Its capacity to address threats and mediate disputes is greatly hindered by its seeming inability to reach consensus on both regional and external border disputes and security threats. A recent example being the numerous overlapping borders within the South China Sea that are argued over, and China's aggression in blocking marine traffic. ASEAN hesitates to do even what is within their power, which is sanctions and pressure, due to the member states' seeming inability to come to an agreement on what to do. Much soft power is also lost on account of ASEAN's lackluster human rights promotion and seeming inability to act on the dire state of some of its members' democracy and human rights violations. Namely, and most recently, is the violent civil war in Myanmar, where so far ASEAN has been unable to make much of an impact with its condemnations of the military leadership, and has been criticized for allowing it to remain a member of ASEAN, allowing the oppressive regime more legitimacy than critics would like. The root of these issues boils down to two tangible factors, which are both crucial to consider when discussing the limits of ASEAN's legitimacy, power, and also its effect on state sovereignty, especially when comparing it to that of other IGOs. Firstly, one of its core policies is that of non-interference in its member states' internal affairs, which is especially controversial due to its members' questionable democracy and growing regional unrest, as mentioned before, signaling a fundamental failure on ASEAN's part. Secondly, the other factor is its lack of a formal legislative organ, giving it little tools to enforce its decisions and signifying to the international community an absence of meaningful international law. This leads to the natural conclusion that the effects on state sovereignty imposed by ASEAN are very limited. Member states, while voluntarily delegating some of their internal sovereignty within the ASEAN framework, still retain complete control because of the organization's commitment to their non-interference policy. At the same time, ASEAN strengthens the external sovereignty of its member states, progressing them faster and garnering more international attention and recognition.